Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville, and today I want to talk about 3 trends I see emerging in the watch hobby around now. I say emerging, but look, some of these things started probably back a year or 2 ago and will be going for another couple of years. And I've also should say, I don't feel particularly insightful listing these. I feel like they're kind of obvious, but I just haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. So you know what? I'm going to claim it and let's talk about it on the other side of the intro. Okay, so trend number 1, red. Red is the new green, which was also the new blue. For as long as there's been watches, watch companies have been offering us different colorways. But generally it's been, the cake has been black or white and everything else has been cream on top. The salmon or the orange or the blue or the green was an extra. Something you might see on a rare reference, on an odd little special edition. But about 10 years ago, blue entered the cake side of the business, became part of the steak, not the seasoning. And so for over the last 10 years, we've had this idea that instead of watches only coming in black and white, we also started expecting to see blue watches routinely, to the point that when the Black Bay Blue arrived, there was no excitement. There was just a lot of shrugging of shoulders and, well, of course there's a blue. About 5 years ago, green started to pop up more and more regularly as cream on the black, white, blue cake. About 2 years ago, that green kind of started becoming the cake. Today in 2021, if a watch comes out in red, blue, green and black, white, black and green, none of us really are surprised. That's now kind of the accepted color palette. About a year ago, red started popping up more and more as an extra, as the cream on the now white, black, blue, green cake. In 2021, that has accelerated, and there's been a number of watch releases, such as the Omega Tresor, the new Breitling Top Times, which have featured red as a core color. My prediction is that through 2021 and beyond, that trend will continue, that we will see more and more red watches. Not as special editions, limited editions, rare and unusual pieces, but as part of the core cake, if you like, as part of the standard palette that watch designers draw from. So for any given release, it is as likely that you will get a red dial, as a green dial, as a black dial, as a white dial, as a blue dial. That these will become part of the canon of our colorways. Okay, trend number 2, the resurgence of the dress watch. Now, first off, let me be clear. I'm not saying that the dress watch is going to become mainstream and that Joe Sixpack will be going into the mall and asking to buy dress watches. That's not going to happen. Nor am I saying that dress watches are going to push the Rolex Submariner or the Omega Speedmaster or Seamaster off the perch as the most popular watches. What I am going to say, though, is that the death of the dress watch has been well and truly overblown, and that in fact, amongst the enthusiast community, it's gaining increasing traction, relevance, and currency. A lot of people have spoken about the rise of the independents. What I've noticed people not talking about so much, maybe I just haven't paid enough attention, is that these independents are almost exclusively selling dress or dressy watches. Yes, I said almost. There is always going to be a couple of these independents selling your more traditional, in modern speak, sports watches. But whether it's FB Journe, Philippe Dufour, or at the more affordable ends, Benzinger, Kadoki, Corona, Dornbluth and Zona, these guys are selling dress watches. So what do I think is at play here? What do I think is changing? I think it's the same factors are driving the push towards independence as are driving the sort of resurgence of interest in dressier pieces. The first is that I think over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a massive influx of collectors. These collectors were mostly new to the idea of spending thousands of dollars on jewelry, and as a result were very cautious in their choices. They really wanted to somewhere where they felt at home. So their watches tended to be very tool, very sports oriented, not come from fashion houses, downplay aesthetics and that sort of thing, and instead play up functionality and sportiness and aggressiveness. I think over the last couple of years, those people have become increasingly comfortable that what they're buying is jewelry. Its number one purpose is for display, that aesthetics and design are probably as if not more important than water resistance or shock absorbance. So what you're seeing is people turning to watches which are designed primarily with the aesthetics in mind, and that's primarily going to be dressy kind of pieces. The second thing is that I think a lot of people, those same people that have come into the community and come in through the tool watch, the dive watch, the pilot's watch, are now finding that their watch boxes are pretty full and pretty same looking. And in an effort to break out of that, to find new watches, to find new looks, in the same way as they're finding new providers, the independents, they're also going back to the classic dress watch as something which is completely different to their diver and their pilot and their field watch. And I think the third thing that's happened is, and compounding all that, is people have realized that the door can swing both ways. That in exactly the same way as we could get comfortable wearing a sports watch with our business attire, people have begun to realize that that door swings the other way, and there's nothing to say you can't get comfortable wearing a dressier piece with shorts and a t-shirt. And as people have got more comfortable with the idea of mixing and matching and saying, I can wear a pair of chinos, a linen shirt, and a dress watch, they've really started to spread their wings. And so, like I said right at the beginning, I am not for an instant saying that a dress watch is going to push the Rolex Submariner off the most wanted list. What I am going to say though is that the death of the dress watch has been vastly overblown, and that instead you're going to see more and more of them. They're going to get more and more interesting, more and more traction, and it's going to change the way our Instagrams look. Okay, third prediction. We are breaking out of the fairly narrow straitjacket of mid-century modern design that we've kind of been locked into. Over the last 10 years or so, watch design has been very retro-focused. And that retro focus has been on a particularly narrow sense of history, largely mid-century modern, late 40s to mid-60s, taking advantage of everything we learned about design and anthropomorphics and ergonomics, all the new processes and materials that came out of World War II. And what you got was this very sleek, minimal, industrial design, cheap to manufacture, easy to use, easy to mix and match design, which is generally called mid-century modern. Those characteristics apply to watches, cars, furniture, houses, all sorts of things. A lot of people have called this timeless, but I think that really reflects that they haven't been in the industry that long, and so they're only seeing now. That fashion, and it is just a fashion, went out of vogue in the late 60s as contemporary postmodern came in, and that was kind of the vogue for a while. And then contemporary postmodern went away and mid-century modern made a resurgent comeback. That churn is very normal. The history of fashion is the history of one generation rejecting the aesthetic choices of their predecessor and coming up with something new. We are in that change right now. We are, as we speak, as I'm making these videos, the millennial generation, a generation of now adults, 25 to 40, is becoming the predominant generation of watch buyers. They are rejecting the mid-century modern aesthetics of their Gen X and late baby boomer predecessors. They're moving on to something else. What they're moving on to is a much more eclectic kind of choice. And so what we're seeing is a whole bunch of new watches branching out in all sorts of directions away from that period of late 40s to mid 60s. It's sometimes what we're seeing is watches going earlier than that, going pre-war. So the new Breitling Daytonas, the Omega Chronostop, bringing in pre-war or just post-war, like early 40s kind of ideas. Conversely, we see brands also going past mid-century modern into, as I said, contemporary and postmodern kind of designs, even occasionally arts and craft inspired designs from the late 60s, 70s and 80s. And so what you're seeing here is, as I said, this kind of eclecticism today of new watches. I should also say it's not just new watches, it's also old watches that have been around but have been kind of out of fashion. But now as mid-century modern goes away, those watch designs start to come back into vogue. It's no coincidence that for example, Cartier Santos, an old Art Deco kind of inspired design that really wasn't paid a lot of attention during the mid-century modern mania of the earlier 2000s, is suddenly on everyone's lips. As again, the millennial watch buyer is arcing back to older pre-Gen X fashions. Likewise, we see the Tag Monaco, which has been around for a while and always bumbling along, suddenly resurging into popularity. The Zenith Chrono El Primero watches, which came at the very, very end of the 1960s, really embracing this postmodern as opposed to mid-century modern design aesthetic, resurgent, becoming far more popular, becoming far more spoken about. I think this is going to continue. We're going to see more and more of these more interesting, diverse, eclectic designs coming onto our radar. And I think the next decade could be super exciting because we're going to get new colors, new styles, and drawing from the full range of watch history, not just a special 20 years. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. These are my ideas about what's going to happen with the watch community, the watch hobby over the next couple of years. What do you think? Do you think I'm smoking dope? Do you think I'm completely wrong? Do you think I've missed some trends? Stick them in the comments below and we'll have a chat. Bye.